Hey, my name is Mike Acosta from ADSR Sounds, and we just finished wrapping up a brand new product called Future-Based Melodics. And so we thought we would share 3 future-based production tips, along with some insight as to how some of these sounds were created for this particular pack. Now, if you're just starting out with music production, or you've been interested in the future-based style, we hope this video gets you going in the right direction. Now, if you like this video and you'd like to see more free tutorials, make sure you subscribe to the channel. It's as easy as clicking the subscribe button below. Now, let's get started. Alright, so here we are with quick tip number 3, the last one of these 3 future-based quick tips. So, when you're working with your synth parts, the first thing I usually suggest is to try bouncing your leads and chords to audio right away. I know that sometimes I'm, again, guilty of this myself, where I just leave it in the MIDI format in case I want to go back and change notes or whatever. But if you actually bounce it to audio right away, you do have a bit more control and some flexibility with doing some cool tricks and, within the arrangement. So for instance, let me play this section here. Okay, so on this chord section here, you can see it has a really slow attack. So once you have this as audio, if you had MIDI, you'd have to go in and adjust the envelopes, on the attack and the decay to try and get some short stutter type of effects. But once you have it in audio, it's actually easier to just come in and I can apply some cuts. And let's shorten the tail on this. We can actually increase that. So let's play this back now and see what it sounds like. So that actually sounds kind of cool. And again, you can do some really cool things once you have it in the audio format. Of course, you can always go and just reverse this section here. So again, just some really simple little things that you can do. I normally like to bounce stuff to audio right away. And another thing that makes this cool is once you have it in audio, another thing I like to do is take these little sections or these little chords, and I like to then dump them right back into a sampler. So here you can see we have a one shot. And again, it's just from simply taking one little section like this and grabbing it and dropping it right into, let's say, like Ableton's sampler. And then you have more control over it here, and you can do some really cool things, add some funky little artifacts that you get when you're using a sampler. And these are things that you probably would want when you're doing any sort of like future bass, future R&B, and even, hip-hop production. So once we have it here in Ableton's sampler, let's take a listen to this really quick. Turn it on, and let's trigger it. Okay, so there's the sampler. And by the way, you also get a total of 12 Ableton instrument racks with the Future-Based Melodics pack. So you get a lot of these already assigned and mapped out for you, so you can do some really cool things, replay the melody lines if you like. You also get all the chord one-shots, so you can do some really cool things with that. And it comes in the Ableton instrument rack format, and as well as some other sampler formats like Contact, EXS24 for Logic users. So once we have it in the sampler format here, obviously we can trigger it, we can replay it. But some cool things that we can do once you have it dropped back into a sampler, we can go in and, mess with the pitch envelopes a bit. We can delay this a little, and we can add just a slight amount of that. And so when we play this, so as you can see here in the piano roll edit screen, I'm triggering some very short notes to get a stutter or very sharp staccato type of effect, while other notes are sustained longer. It's much more difficult to do that when you're playing it live from the synthesizer itself, whether it's software or hardware, unless you start tweaking the ADSR envelopes, which then affects the whole part instead of just one note. when you have it in a sampler, once you bounce it to audio, drop it in a sampler, you have a bit more control on doing some crazy little effects like this. And of course, you can re-trigger the notes, move them around and whatnot. So let me play this again really quick. Okay, so we did a little bit of the pitch envelope to that. So let's see if we increase it just a tad. Okay, and another thing that we can do is, let's say we want to add some glide. Let's put about 350 milliseconds on that. And we'll add a little bit of a stereo spread. Let's give it like 30%. And under the filter section here, we can even bump this up a little bit. Turn on the shaper and give it just a little bit of overdrive on that. Let's play it back. And let's say we can even go into the LFO section, and let's say we want to route some of the LFO to the filter. Okay, just real simple stuff. And of course, we can add a little bit of sidechain on it. So in here, obviously with LFO tool, you can actually change the curves. So we want to keep the initial transient attack and then have it dip off and then pick up. But we can also go and, assign the cutoff filter within the LFO tool and assign that to this particular envelope as well. So when we play it all back together. I know it sounds a little funky, but if we actually go and play it with the drums, then it sounds like this. Okay, so just some simple things. Again, this is just one of the reasons why I like to take some of my chord progressions and things like that, and then bounce them over to one-shots as samples and then drop them back into a sampler again and start re-triggering things. All right, so the last part of this is applying pitch bends and tape stop effects to some of your chord progressions. Obviously, you'll hear a lot of weird things like that within Future Bass tracks. They're really interesting, and there's a ton of different ways to do it. There's no real right or wrong way. So I'm just going to go through and just show you how I did it in this particular scenario. So let's take a listen again to what we have here. Okay, so you can hear that on the chord section here. Now, these are things obviously you can do when you have it in the MIDI format. You can, obviously use the pitch bend wheel on your keyboard controller, and, you can actually play it live and do it there. Sometimes it doesn't always sound the same. And again, this goes back to why I like bouncing my MIDI parts to audio right away, because you get a different sound when you do some of these things. So on this section here, if we double click on it and we take a look at our envelopes here, as you can see right here, all we did was we pitched it down about 12 semitones, and we used the automation curve within Ableton to kind of just let it slide up. So and we have it on the Pro setting here, and you can adjust the formants in the envelope. And obviously when you do that, you have a bit more control, because you can get some weird artifacts happening sometimes depending on which setting you choose. Like if you decide to go with texture, or maybe using the tones. See, it's a little bit different there. If we go to texture, and then go to Complex Pro. So it'll always be different. It really just depends on the source material. So I definitely recommend to experiment with those particular settings there. And again, you just enter in the note here. All you do is you go to your clip, and under transposition modulation, you can bring it down about 12 semitones, and then just use the automation curve to pitch bend up, and set it where you like. So we can do that again. So if we go here on the first part, we can turn on the warp markers here. And again, this goes back to why it's cool to have it in audio format sometimes. I want the pitch bend to come in after, so I'm going to set a note here as the start point. And we'll go here and maybe drop it down 12 semitones. And we can hold down the Option key, and we can kind of apply a little bit of a curve here. And let's take a listen to that. We can even move this back if we want it to start sooner. And then let's say we want this to go up. So again, we can go 12 semitones up. And give it just a slight curve. And maybe just really curve it down like that. So let's check this out and see what it sounds like. So obviously it's a little extreme, but it's just to give you an idea of how to accomplish that. So if we play it back with everything, let's check it out. So we can always bring this down maybe just 6. Okay, so that's just one section there, applying some pitch bends. And again, if I play this back with our drums, so let's check this out. So in our first video, I had talked about drums and removing parts and making space for other things, and this is exactly what I was referring to. So in the drum section, we removed the kick drum from the first downbeat, and that actually allows for this pitch bend on this particular chord to really shine, and you can hear it without it being like covered up by the drums. It pulls your ears in, it lets you pay attention, and then you really focus on that pitch bend, which is cool. Something, again, very common with producing future bass. So just to keep that in mind, that's why we remove the drums there. It's to allow for some of these other synth parts to really shine through. The next section, really quick, is also working with tape stops. Now that, I will play this section here, and you'll be able to hear where we applied the tape stop effect. Okay, so on this particular section, and in this scenario, I actually applied the tape stop to the entire synth bus because I want everything to kind of shift down. So for this instance, we are using the Vengeance VPS, which is the tape stop, and insert it on your synth bus. So all your synth parts that are grouped, and you can see here that right before the downbeat, we automated the stop. And then what we did was, so right here we did it before the drop into the beat. And then right here we actually did it on the downbeat. So again, this goes back to when we remove things, remove drums. In this section here, I did the same thing where I removed the kick drum. and I actually placed the tape stop on the downbeat. So it sounds like. And what I also did was I also automated the reverb send. So if I was to take this off, the tape stop would be really dry. So you can hear that the tape stop is just very dry and it almost stands out a little too much. So again, I automated the reverb send, and what we did was we cranked that up all the way, and then we applied a curve to it after, so that way the tape stop effect happens, but it's not so in your face. It's covered up a little bit with the reverb, and it helps mask it and keep it like in the mix. Okay, so that's just using some tape stops again and putting the tape stop on the actual entire bus and actually placing it on the downbeat instead of like right before a drop, which is typical. So again, experimentation. You can always change the actual powered down lengths on it, and you can automate that as well. So you can even make it sound like if it's like vinyl where it's slowing down and then you start the vinyl back up and then it just takes time to speed back up. So you really get that like slow tape start effect. Again, these are all things that are just really cool to do, and you'll hear this kind of stuff in future bass tracks. So these are just some of the ways that I've done them. Again, experiment, try your own different things. There's no real wrong way. So I hope that you found something useful from these 3 quick tip tutorials. If you haven't seen the first 2 videos, make sure to check them out here on the ADSR channel. Links will be posted for this new ADSR pack titled Future Bass Melodics, which is where you can get all these lead melodies, chord progressions, along with the MIDI files once it's available, along with new related videos. So don't forget to subscribe to this ADSR YouTube channel. I'm Mike Acosta, and I will see you in the next studio session.